Hello and welcome to your Broken Galaxy. I am Broken, and today I'm going to be answering the fascinating question, what if Sebulba killed Anakin? Alright, we probably all remember that in episode 1, Sebulba sabotages Anakin's pod racer. There's some little metal thing sticking out and he just sort of pulls it down, snaps it, breaks it off. During the pod race, it breaks even further, but Anakin regains control and ends up being alright. So, here's what happens instead. Sebulba decides he's going to murder Anakin. I mean, we already get to see him kill people in the race anyway, and the sabotage that he did to Anakin's pod racer could have easily led to his death. So in this scenario, he pulls down the little thing, crosses some wires, makes it much more likely that there's just going to be a feedback loop and blow up Anakin's racer. So here we go. The race starts. Anakin's like a total amateur. He's not going anywhere. He ends up flipping some switches and unfortunately has a catastrophic engine failure. The pod bursts into a fireball with pieces flying everywhere. Qui-Gon's eyes go wide. Padme turns from the racetrack in horror, and Shmi just falls to her knees, bawling her eyes out and screaming. She is utterly inconsolable, and as Qui-Gon goes to comfort her, she pushes him away and starts screaming profanities at him. Meanwhile, Watto is over in his little observation booth laughing at Anakin, and then he's like, oh wait, I owned that guy. Jar Jar asks Qui-Gon, "You thinking he's a being okie day?" And Qui-Gon looks at Jar Jar with disgust and is like, "No, Jar Jar, I don't." As Qui-Gon looks over to Shmi, she stands up and tries to fling herself from the observation tower, but Padme reaches out to grab her, to which Shmi turns around and smacks her right in the face. Shmi is gritting her teeth in sheer rage. She points at Padme, wanting to say something through the tears, but she stops herself. The anger at this moment is stronger than even the sorrow. She goes and she sits until they can get out of the tower. And Jar Jar goes to Padme and asks her, "You thinking she's gonna be alright?" And Padme looks at him with disgust and says, "No, Jar Jar, I don't." So, they end up coming down from the tower, and Shmi just bolts it out of there back to her home. So Watto comes and starts demanding payment, because Qui-Gon made all sorts of bets. So now Qui-Gon loses the Queen's ship, and Padme is just furious at Qui-Gon, right? They get all of this stuff off the ship, hoping they can sell it, but they have nowhere to go. So they decide, like fools, that they are going to go to Shmi's house and ask if they can all stay there. Now, mind you, there is Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, Padme, 4 handmaidens, Captain Pancake, at least 3 other guys, plus the ridiculous and terrible Jar Jar. So when this group of like a dozen people show up at Shmi's house, she is just livid. The rage, which over the course of the day had started to subside into a soul-crushing sorrow, is lit anew. She just goes off on them. She is swearing, screaming, yelling, telling them how they are the worst people in the world for getting her son killed. Her rage is burning with the intensity of a star, and like all of the neighbors, they get it. They support their local Sky Lady, unloading her anger on these losers. They start coming outside and yelling at Qui-Gon and his merry bunch to get out of there too. And Qui-Gon is like, "Is this what Anakin would have wanted?" To which Obi-Wan, who doesn't truly understand everything that happened since she was on the ship, looks at Qui-Gon with disgust and his mouth agape at the unmitigated audacity of this man. Shmi steps right up to him, her face so close that it's only about an inch away, and says almost in a whisper, "You are the single most vile man that I have met in my entire life. Leave this place and never speak to me again." So Qui-Gon turns to look at his troop, almost as if to find someone giving him reassurance that Shmi is being unreasonable. But Pancake, the handmaidens, the decoy queen, all of them are looking ashamed to be a part of this group. The only folks that aren't looking away are Obi-Wan, whose mouth is still hanging agape, in shock at the lack of Qui-Gon's decorum, Padme, who is looking at Qui-Gon with rage in her eyes, and Jar Jar, who's just smiling like an idiot, giving him a thumbs up. So, the troop ends up leaving and selling one of Padme's dresses to get a small room for the night. And when they wake up the next day, they just kind of are roaming the streets looking for work so they can eventually buy passage off the planet. until out of nowhere, Darth Maul shows up and kills like 3 crew members, then runs towards Qui-Gon. So he's just baffled at this new turn of events and pulls out his lightsaber. He's like really unprepared for this, and he is on the cusp of being overwhelmed. They go back and forth with their sabers for about 30 seconds until Maul ends up stabbing Qui-Gon in the stomach, just like he did in the movie. Just as that is happening, Obi-Wan walks out of a shop alongside Jar Jar yelling, "Qui-Gon, I found some work!" But then Qui-Gon comes into view as Maul turns his head to look at Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan screams, "No!" And then Maul pulls the saber out from Qui-Gon, spins around, and decapitates him. So it's on. Obi-Wan draws his saber and rushes in. After a few moments, he is starting to feel overwhelmed too. His and Maul's sabers are pushing against each other. Obi-Wan is fine, but he is doing all he can just to keep Maul at bay. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, the Force!" He force grabs Qui-Gon's saber and throws it into Maul, cutting him in half. Then Obi-Wan walks over to Qui-Gon and is like, "Master, why?" And Jar Jar walks up to him and is like, "You thinking he's gonna be okay?" And Obi-Wan looks up in an exasperated shock and says, "No, Jar Jar, I don't," as indignantly as he possibly can. After this, the local security force is trying to track them down, and reasonably so. Obi-Wan just bisected a man in the street after all. So now Captain Panaka is like, you know what, he probably came here in a ship. Maybe we could use it. So the ridiculous group is now trying to find Darth Maul's ship while running from the police. Thankfully, a data card that Obi-Wan was smart enough to take off of Maul's bodies allows them to get access to the ship. They fly back to Coruscant. Obi-Wan takes Padme to the Jedi Council as a witness and is like, "I think it was a Sith Lord. We have his ship." And Padme is like, "Yeah, Master Qui-Gon was an absolute fool." And Obi-Wan is like, "Master Qui-Gon's judgment did seem at times a little bit misguided." And the council is like, "Yeah, okay, so he was kind of a quack. That's why we didn't let him on the council." So Amidala goes back to Naboo with Obi-Wan and ends up breaking into the palace as per the usual plan. But because Anakin isn't there to blow up the ship, the Gungans are slaughtered, and the droid army turns and marches towards Theed. They end up storming the castle, and everybody dies. Palpatine gets elected Chancellor because of a sympathy vote. He takes over the galaxy in the Clone Wars. He ends up just finding an apprentice in one of the younglings after he enacts Order 66, and the galaxy remains in darkness forever. Thank you so much for watching the video today, guys. As you may have seen, my channel is growing. I just passed 300 subscribers. I would like to turn this YouTube channel into at least a part-time job, and so please share. Please tell your friends about Your Broken Galaxy, people that like Star Wars and like to laugh. Hopefully they'll enjoy it. If you want to support the channel, look at the links in the description below. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and all that garbage.